Hello everybody, welcome into another lesson. So today is going to be a fairly simple lesson. Today we're going to discuss the midpoint formula. And what that is if you have two coordinates on the coordinate plane, there's a formula you can use to find the midpoint of those 2 points, the point that's halfway between them. That formula is your first x coordinate plus your second x coordinate over 2, and then your first y coordinate and your second y coordinate divided by 2. So it's really pretty simple here. Let's go ahead. Let's do the points -6, 0. And then we'll also do the point 4, 0. So we want to find the midpoint of -6, 0 and 4, 0. So let's go ahead and apply the formula. Let me write in a different color for that. Okay. So what this is going to entail is we'll take our first x coordinate of -6 plus the second x coordinate of 4. So you'll have -6 plus 4 all over 2. And then you'll take your first y coordinate of 0 plus your second y coordinate of 0 and divide that by 2. Which, now we just simply got to do some arithmetic. So -6 plus 4, that's going to be -2 all over 2. And then 0 plus 0, well, that's 0 all over 2. Which we simplify this further, -2 divided by 2, that's going to be -1. 0 divided by 2 is 0. So it turns out the midpoint of those 2 points is going to be -1, 0. And really, you could think of this x1 plus x2 over 2 and that y1 plus y2 over 2. Think of it like finding the average of 2 numbers, right? Whenever you find the average of 2 numbers, you simply add the 2 numbers together, then divide them by 2. And you usually get a value that's bigger than the first one but smaller than the second one, somewhere in between, halfway in between, right? So that is what you'll come up with. Almost forgot an eraser. But yeah, so there's the first example. I got about 5 more problems. This isn't going to be a very long lesson because midpoint formula is fairly simple to cover. Alright, what is the next one I'd like to do? We're going to find the midpoint of 0, -9, and then we're also going to do 0, 7. So now we're going to find the midpoint of 0, -9, and 0, 7. So once again, what that's going to entail is you'll take your first x coordinate of 0 plus your second x coordinate of 0. You'll divide that by 2. Then you'll take your first y coordinate of -1 plus your second y coordinate of 7. Divide that by 2. Which this will turn into, 0 plus 0 is 0. So you'll have 0 over 2. And then -9 plus 7, that's -2 all over 2. Which then when you do the division, you should simply end up getting 0, -1 as your midpoint. So the midpoint of those 2 points can be found at 0, -1. And as we get into geometry, this will really become more useful. But this is such an easy formula, honestly, I figured I would do a quick lesson on it today. Alright. What about the points 3, 4, and then we'll have 9, 7. So we need to find the midpoints of the midpoint between 3, 4, and 9, 7. So let's go ahead and evaluate that here. Take your first x coordinate of 3 plus your second x coordinate of 9. You'll divide that by 2. And then you'll take your first y coordinate of 4 plus your second y coordinate of 7. You'll divide that by 2. Which, let's see, 3 plus 9, that's going to be 12. So you'll have 12 divided by 2. Then 4 plus 7, that's 11 divided by 2. Which we know 12 divided by 2, that's 6. But 11 halves don't simplify any further. So your midpoint is going to be at 6 11 halves or 6 5 1/2, depending upon how you want to write it. But yes, it is possible to get midpoints having coordinates with fractions. That is entirely possible. So midpoint is going to be 6 11 halves. I got 3 more examples and we're done for the day. Let's see, we have here 10 3, then we got -4 9. So we need to find the midpoint between 10 3 and -4 9. So once again, take your first x-coordinate of 10 plus your second x-coordinate of -4. Well, 10 plus -4, that's 10 minus 4. That'll be over 2. And then you take your first y-coordinate of 3 plus your second y-coordinate of 9, divide that by 2. Now let's do some simple arithmetic. 10 minus 4, that's going to be 6, so you'll have 6 over 2. And then 3 plus 9, that's 12, so then you'll have 12 over 2 for your y-coordinate, which this will simplify into 3 6. So the midpoint of those 2 points can be found at 3 6. I just got 2 more problems and we're done. I like to cover it thoroughly, whatever I teach, so I'm sure you get it by now, but I'd rather be thorough. Okay, so let's see. We have the point -5, -3, and then we also have the point -9, -6. So we need to find the midpoint between -5, -3, and -9, -6. So again, first, take your first x-coordinate of -5 plus your second x-coordinate of -9, which would turn into -5 minus 9. That'd be over 2. Then take your first y-coordinate of -3 plus your second y-coordinate of -6, which would turn into -3 minus 6, all over 2, which when we simplify this, -5 minus 9, that's -14 over 2. And then -3 minus 6, that's -9 over 2, which will simplify further into -7. Then -9 halves doesn't simplify any further. You can write -9 halves as -4 1/2 if you want, but your midpoint for these 2 points is going to be -7, -9 halves. And I got 1 more problem and we can call it a day. Alright, we got 7 -2. So let's see, 7 -2. And then we have 4 -6. Alright, so what we're being asked to do now is find the midpoint of 7 -2 and 4 -6. So, again, take your first x-coordinate, which is 7, plus your second x-coordinate of 4. You're going to divide that by 2. Then you'll take your first y-coordinate of -2 plus your second y-coordinate of -6, which would turn into -2 minus 6 all over 2. Which now, let's see, 7 plus 4, that's 11 over 2. And then -2 minus 6, that's -8 over 2. Which we know 11 halves doesn't simplify any further. So you're going to get 11 halves for the x-coordinate, -8 halves, that's -4. So the midpoint of those 2 points can be found at 11 halves negative 4, which 11 halves, that's 5.5, then negative 4. So, yeah, and that's it for the midpoint formula. It really is that simple. So next lesson, we're going to get back into square roots and radicals. We're going to multiply, divide them, and simplify them. So I hope everyone has a good day. Take care.